All right, in this episode, you're going to get some special content from UFC Moncton, some stuff that wasn't released on the Fight Night Picks YouTube channel. I'm also going to be speaking with Jay Anderson from Cageside Press to break down the card from last week, but also to preview UFC 230 coming up this Saturday. So, let's get into it. And welcome to another episode of Fight Night Picks. I'm your host, Craig Allen. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at CraigAllenFNP. And today it's a very special episode because there's going to be some previously unreleased video footage, some audio clips from my week at UFC Moncton. I was there from Wednesday until Sunday morning, got back very early. And I was also joined there by Jay Anderson from Cageside Press, and he's going to join me on this episode as well. We're going to have a few clips running during our interview, and it was a lot of fun talking to Jay. We also previewed UFC 230 coming up this Saturday. There's so much fight action before, the end of the year, even into 2019, new dates announced, and Jay and I are going to talk about that as well. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation with Jay. Awesome, Jay. Well, thanks so much for joining me. I mean, you had a chance to ride in a nice turboprop plane all the way from Ontario to UFC Moncton. How was your time in the Maritimes last week?
You know what? I love the part where I was on the ground. I am not a good flyer, and I walked under the tarmac. When's the last time you boarded the plane on a tarmac? And I went, oh boy, somebody give me the sleeping aid right now. I don't want to be awake for this. But you know what? It was really good. I've been a while since I've been out there, and I love traveling throughout Canada. It's a thing of mine. Years ago, I got to go all the way out to the Yukon, to the Northwest Territories, did this big road trip. I was supposed to do the East Coast, and plans for that fell through at the last minute. So this was kind of my makeup for it. At least I got to go out to Moncton and got to see the UFC, got to cover that. So that was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it was a busy week for us covering the event. I mean, what were some of the surprises before the fights even started? Some surprises from Media Day and maybe even some of the build-up to the card.
You know what? There weren't too many surprises, but it was good to see a couple guys come out like Court McGee and Ed Herman, who have been around for a while. And, McGee getting the win. Herman didn't get the win, but it was a good fight. So that was excellent. Maybe the other surprise for me was Anthony Smith. Going into it, he said it didn't bother him, but it really did appear that the criticism of, hey, you're beating up old men, hey, who have you really, really beaten, that really did appear to be getting to him. And he obviously made a statement in the main event.
Volkan's a different story because of the things that he's been saying and the way that he carries himself and just the total disregard and kind of disrespect for me that he has. And I haven't said too much about it, but I plan on reminding him of everything on Saturday for sure.
Was there anything specific he said that bugged you more so than
just the stupid shit. Like, now it's time for me to find out what it's like at the top of the division. Like, what the hell does that mean? Like, how'd it work out for him last time he was at the top of the division? Didn't work out too goddamn good if you ask me. And just talking how that I'm not a great striker and that he only wanted to fight me because of the hype that I have right now that I don't really deserve it. Like, that's just some arrogant shit, and I told him a month ago, be very careful what you say, because you don't want to feel stupid later on when I throw it in your face.
I mean, when he showed up here, it wasn't really to christen the new arena, but it was more to promote the fight, and the arena hadn't quite fully opened up yet. So he was here, spoke to media. There were only three of us that interviewed him, and I kind of pressed him on some of those questions, pressed him on his training camp. Like I said, it was more of a follow-up where I asked him if he trained with Curtis Blades, possibly who that guy was that he brought in from Stipe's camp to train with, and he was kind of coy, didn't really answer that, said that, he didn't get Blades in. And of course, he got to try out the poutine when he was here the first time, not so much the second time. And hopefully you got a chance to enjoy it too while you were here. But now, with McDonald's in Canada, you can get it anywhere, I guess.
We're not going to call that poutine at all. If it's from McDonald's, it's not the real deal. I went out, I had the braised boar poutine while I was there. It was fantastic. One of the other things, and it surprised him, and he mentioned it, was Volkan Ozdemir is actually fluent in French, but Anthony Smith was the star of that. Fans were behind him, and even he was shocked. Hey, I've got all these fans in Canada.
You've been up here a couple times now. What's it been like fighting in front of the Canadian fans?
Man, did you guys hear the crowd? They were going crazy. And then Volkan came out and they were booing. It's almost like I almost felt like I was Canadian, man. It was awesome. Like I don't know if I'd get that kind of ovation in Nebraska. That was wild. I said at the beginning of the week, I didn't realize I had so many fans in Canada. And, man, when my music played and Return of the Mac came on, man, they were just wild. There's people dancing in the crowd, and it was amazing. You know, the whole week has been awesome, man. I couldn't go anywhere without anybody, you know, hollering and screaming, "Go Lionheart!" Or, you know, it was amazing. It was amazing, and I really look forward to fighting Canada again.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was quite interesting. You know, I had spoken to Ozdemir about a month before the fight, and, you know, I started the conversation in French, and his eyes kind of perked up. He said, "Oh, you speak French?" I said, "Yeah, you know, bilingual province. It's fully bilingual in New Brunswick. Laws have to be written separately in English and in French. And in the Moncton area, you're about a third or close to a half between French and English split." So, yeah, he really liked that. He said he was really excited to come to Moncton, be able to perform in front of some of those French fans. And yeah, he didn't really get such a warm reception. I went back and watched the fight. I mean, for you and I couldn't really tell when it was going on. But yeah, it was kind of quiet there. Maybe almost crickets when Ozdemir came out.
It's actually, I took a note about it because I actually did notice it at the time. Smith came out, he got this great reception, and then you're right, Ozdemir came out and it was almost crickets, and I went, oh, wow, Smith wasn't kidding. He's got some fans in Canada. And good for him, he made the most of it, and that, honestly, I do think was a star turn. It was exactly the kind of fight he needed.
Yeah, I mean, the one other thing for me that was before the fights, and then, you know, you and I, we both kind of followed up with it after, but I asked Gian Villante, I mean, the first 4 or 5 fights of his career, fought him at heavyweight. You know, he's kind of getting to the age where we see some guys progress and maybe move up a weight class, and he would consider moving up to heavyweight in the future.
You fought at the start of your career in heavyweight. Is there ever going to be an opportunity when you move back up to 265?
I don't know, man. My arms keep growing, and they won't stop. I'm getting bigger and bigger. I'm jacked like that guy back there. So, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be tough to stay down at this weight always. But, I mean, I make it easy. I mean, I have a great coach who makes sure I stay on my diet thing the whole week. I just listen to him as much as it sucks. And I make the weight 205. But, yeah, man, I'm way too jacked to stay down here. Eventually, I'll get up to 265. I do. I mean, I meet some of the other heavyweights at these fights, this and that, and just as big as the guys, especially when I'm, you know, not dieting and stuff like that. But it makes me look better during the summer when I have to start getting down. You know, I live on the beach. I gotta have a reason to lose a little weight.
One question I asked you the other day, and I just kind of wanted to follow up on. I mean, you had mentioned Krylov moving forward in light heavyweight division, but is heavyweight still something you're giving thought to?
Yeah, I think so. Why not? I mean, I do like slugging, man, and up there, why not do it up there with them big dudes? I think it'd be fun, man. I've been hit by some of the hardest hitters in heavyweight, in both boxing and MMA, you know. Stipe Miocic and my buddy Adam Kornacki is number 4 in the world right now in boxing. So, been hit by those dudes. Not saying I hurt that, but I mean, I can stand in there and trade with them. So, why not do it one day up there heavy? We'll see. I mean, I got a little bit of time to think here. Maybe enjoy the holidays a little bit. Eat some turkey. Have some mom's lasagna, and that's it. You know, then we'll figure it out. After the lasagna, I might need to go to heavyweight.
Yeah. I mean, he says he's training. You know, obviously he's trained with Stipe and he's trained with his boxing. I forget the gentleman's name, but he's, I believe, ranked 4th in the world at heavyweight for boxing on one of the ranking bodies. And he says, hey, I've taken shots from them. Maybe I can go up and do it. Whenever someone talks about going up to heavyweight, though, I always take a step back. If it's any other weight class, you're going up 10, maybe 15 pounds. When you're going up to heavyweight, you've got such a disparity between, you know, 225 and 265, where I go, yeah, okay, Villante, I can definitely see you stepping in with guys who are 230. I'm not sure what happens when you go up against a guy who's cutting weight to make 265.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we've seen some of those guys like Ryan Bader, even Chael Sonnen moving up, having success. I mean, you see it with DC as well. But yeah, Gian Villante, he might be perfect for that cruiserweight type weight class, which we haven't seen it fully implemented in any of the leagues. But I did mention it, I think, with you. But NEF coming up in 3 weeks from tomorrow, or I guess a couple days, they're going to have a cruiserweight championship fight there, 225. So I'm really looking forward to that. I know I said on my radio shows, I said it before we came on, Moncton might not have been the highest of profile names, and I think we kind of saw that in the ratings afterward, and possibly even the ticket sales as well. But stars could have been made on Saturday night. I mean, what were some of the performances that stuck out in your mind the most?
Obviously Smith, but I don't want to dwell on that too much, and we can talk about that a little bit. Some of the big ones for me, Misha Serkinov did all that, transitional stuff where he moved down to Vegas and he started training in Extreme Couture. He started training at the Performance Institute with the UFC. Going into that fight on an 0-2 skid after he was so hyped up, him getting back in the win column, him submitting Patrick Cummins, that was a big one for me. There were a couple of others. Andre Sukumtat fighting a short notice replacement. He was expected to win. The fact that he looked as good as he did doing it, that was a big thing. Likely saved his job there. And then Don Madge, obviously coming in as a champion in EFC and getting that big knockout, making a statement, that was a big one as well.
Yeah, I mean, Don Madge looked great, obviously. It was T. Edwards was a huge favorite in that fight, and he was able to get the job done in the second round. He was looking for that armbar awfully tight there in the first, but ended up squeaking it out. And another interesting thing I found was when Don Madge went on Twitter later on, and he had mentioned it before, but he's going to be training with Chris Cyborg ahead of her fight against Amanda Nunes, so I found that pretty interesting. And I know she brings in a lot of different talent, a lot of different men and women to train with. And as well, I mean, you mentioned Misha Serkinov, almost like a return to form against Patrick Cummins, early win. You have to wonder what's next for him. I mean, he strings together a couple of wins like that, you skyrocket to the top of the division. And the one other one that I kind of wanted to mention, I mean, it was fight of the night, of course, but Nasrat Haqparast and Thibaut Goudy. I mean, Haqparast, he said to both of us and Mike as well, I want to develop. I don't want to go too fast. And then he went on Twitter 2 days ago, and I'm going to read you the tweet. This guy, Ben Askren, talking a lot of smack. I would like to fight him or Showtime Pettis, Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal, or even Conor McGregor. Send me any of these bums and I will knock them out. So I don't know what his plan is now, but the future looks bright for him for sure.
I think that's the difference between the level-headed, calm and collected fighter you get, and then, hey, you know what? I've still got to self-promote and I've got to get followers on Twitter. The reality is he's probably not getting any of those guys, and he probably will take things slow, which is good. I like fighters actually taking that track, saying, I'm aware of how this business works. I don't need to rush it. I don't need to jump into the deep end too soon.
Like I said in Octagon, I don't want to fly too high. You see those young guys, they get crazy after one win, they hype too much. I really think I don't want to build it too big. Like, you need to back a hype up, Those guys, they build hype, but they don't back it up because they get lazy in training, So I take it slowly. If they want to promote, it's good. I bring exciting fights, But my job is not to promote myself in social media. My job is to train in the gym, make good fights, and this is what makes it popular, right?
That was a fantastic fight. I thought there was at least one moment where it could have been stopped. I'm surprised it wasn't. But, it turned out into fight of the night and maybe a bit of a star turn for Haqparast.
The only other soundbite, and I will play it in this episode, you had Sean Strickland saying post-fight that he'd pick training over sex, which certainly surprised me.
I'll eat bad, but I mean, my addiction's training. I love it. Like, literally the only thing on this planet I love to do, girls, sex, whatever, I will pick training any day over any other thing on this planet. I would train right now. If somebody at a gym offered me to go spar a few rounds, I would test my knee out. I'm like, all right, I'll be over in a second. I just love it.
And then another thing that surprised me, and a big takeaway, I mean, you had David Shaw, UFC Senior Vice President, International Content, saying that there's going to be 3 events in Canada in 2019. Where did you get the sense that those events are most likely going to end up?
If I had to pick one right now, or actually pick 2, I think Montreal is a front runner, and I think Vancouver is a front runner. Those are the 2 cities that he mentioned. He said Montreal, hopefully next year, if not the year after. Obviously, they would like to have GSP on the card if they do go to Montreal. If he's going to fight, if GSP is going to fight again, I think it's going to be in 2019. I don't think you're going to see him take an even more extended layoff. He's already been out for a while since the Bisping fight. So that would be one. Vancouver, I think, is due again. And then there's probably some, dark candidates that he didn't mention, but I've been wondering when they would get to Hamilton. That's a fight town. The Score Fighting series used to film out of there. And there's probably a couple of others that they haven't been to. And he did say Atlantic Canada. It kind of seems like they want to go out that way maybe every other year.
I mean, we haven't finalized any plans. We're going to be back in Canada next year 3 times. We haven't been to Montreal in a while. We haven't been to Vancouver in a while. We've had great success in Alberta in the last couple of years. This summer with Calgary, last September with Edmonton. We've got Toronto upcoming. So, our plan, as we've mentioned before, is to try to get it, from BC to Nova Scotia and everywhere in between. And so no plans yet, but we will definitely be back at some point in the next year or two.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Hammer makes a lot of sense. You'd have a lot of fans show up there. I mean, Arjun Bowler was kind of pushing for, what was it, Brampton? So maybe that's another area.
Well, I think with Arjun Bowler, he was more saying if he was to fight in Toronto, because I asked him about the card on 231, he's saying Brampton would come out for their boy. It's so close. Anything in that GTA area in Ontario, I mean, you put it in Toronto and all the surrounding cities are going to go to it. So, but Hamilton would be an interesting one. And, they did Ottawa a couple of years ago. I wouldn't be surprised if they go back there at some point. And hopefully this time the arena will have air conditioning.
Yeah, and you'd have to almost try and get it to, what is it now? Is it the Canadian Tire Center now, or did they change it again as Scotia?
You know what? I don't keep track of the names, to be honest with you, because the rights change too quickly.
Exactly. But yeah, UFC Moncton, it was a great event. Had a lot of fun there. I ended up, the night ended for me around 3:30, and then I drove home and got home at about 6 a.m. Sunday morning. So we're getting ready for UFC 230. It's coming up on Saturday from MSG. You've got the Fight Pass prelims, 6:15 p.m. Eastern. FS1 prelims, 8 p.m. Eastern. Main card on pay-per-view, 10 p.m. Eastern. I mean, Jay, what are some of the fights on the card that maybe they're not featured on the main card, but you'd be urging fight fans to check out?
You know what? I'm a guy who likes storylines. They don't necessarily need to be the dramatic Conor and Khabib storylines, because that's a little too much. But I like feel-good stories. I like Brian Kelleher's story, where Boom is a guy who's calling in and trying to win tickets on Ariel Helwani's show, and now he's in the UFC. I'm going to enjoy that feel-good story. I'm going to enjoy seeing him in New York. Ben Saunders stepping in on short notice for that fight. And Julio Arce fighting for the 3rd time in Madison Square Garden in his 3rd different sport. That is kind of a cool opportunity to get.
I mean, you mentioned it, Ben Saunders taking on Lyman Good. I mean, how did those guys not fight in Bellator back in the day when they were both at the top of the welterweight division there? I think that's a great fight. I mean, Good had that 2-year break where, was it a tainted supplement? Wasn't it? Then he went out and sued a company or a couple different companies for it. Ended up, lost his last fight by, split decision to Zaleski dos Santos. So I'm looking forward to that one. I know the odds favor Good. He's about a -700 favorite. Saunders is looking like a +500 right now, coming in on short notice for Sultan Aliyev. And you mentioned, Brian Kelleher. I love to watch the guy fight. He's fought top talent in the past. 2 wins over Arce, like you had mentioned. Henan Brow, Alcantara he's fought before, Sukumtok, Jimmy Rivera. So he's been fighting top talent, but he's at a huge height and reach disadvantage against Montel Jackson, like 3 inches of height, 9 inches of reach. I'm really looking forward to that one. There's a lot of great fights on here. The Shane Burgos fight, another one. Kurt Hollabaugh, 2nd stint in the UFC, had a little bit of a taste to start his career. But yeah, there's all sorts of good fights. Another one that I think you're really going to like. I know a lot of fight fans will like that. Matt, the Steamroller Frivola, taking on Groovy Lando Venata. Is Lando Venata the best fighter ever to have a 1-3 and 1-0 contest record in the UFC?
He might be. I had the opportunity to watch him live. I think it was on the 206 card in Toronto. And the dude is just stellar. And he came in and he had all that hype. No one knew who he was. And then overnight he had all that hype. Guys from his camp are saying this is one of the best guys you've never heard about. He had that absolutely thrilling fight with Ferguson. And, from there, you're right. His record doesn't show just how talented he is.
Yeah, he's looked great in some of his fights, and he's got 3 fight of the nights, 1 performance, like something like that. He's always entertaining. If we move up to the main card, apart from that main event, there's a lot of great fights on there. There's one that's a bit of a head scratcher with Robertson and Marshman. I'm having a hard time trying to see how that fight's going to go because Marshman, when he was over in Europe, former Cage Warriors middleweight champ, he fought a lot of top talent over there. Some guys that, you might recognize. Lee Chadwick, who was middleweight champ before he got his belt stripped. He weighed overweight in his last fight, and they stripped him from the belt just like that. Scott Askham, Ion Pascu, Abu Azaitar. I think it's a good fight, but it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense being on a main card. Both guys coming off losses too.
It's almost something you see them do sometimes on pay-per-views, space it out a little, have a fight where you might highlight a guy who, he's not on the best run, but maybe this is something, we see something in him. The fight on the main card that I am going to have my eyeballs on without question is the last Stylebender versus Derek Brunson. Israel Adesanya had a ton of hype coming in because of his kickboxing prowess, because of how flashy he is. He is miles ahead of us as a striker. But then you saw when he came up against a wrestler, and I'm sorry, my dog wants to get a word edgewise right now. You saw when he did go up against a wrestler, it wasn't as one-sided. I'm really curious because this is a big step up in competition for him against Derek Brunson. Obviously, Derek Brunson has fought Anderson Silva. Didn't get the win, but that was a very close fight, and a lot of people thought he should have. So I'm curious to see how this goes. I'm going to have all eyes on that.
Anderson Silva, Yoel Romero, Jacare twice. He's fought top talent. His takedown defense is excellent. He can hit the takedown too, and he's a hard hitter as well. I mean, these two guys ranked in the top 10 in the UFC's rankings. Say what you will about the rankings, but I mean, it does hold a little bit of water there. I'm really looking forward to that one. David Branch being, matched up with Cannonier. I mean, Jared Cannonier's fought some top talent, guys like you've said, but he's lost 2 in a row. Blachowicz, Dominic Reyes. Does it make a whole lot of sense to put him up against David Branch in the spot?
I think this is a bit of a showcase fight for David Branch, and obviously he picked up that big win over Thiago Silva in Atlantic City. Cannonier, like you said, he's fought some top guys. I believe he fought Teixeira as well.
Yeah, he did, yep.
He has not gotten easy draws.
No.
So I think this is continuing that pattern of he's willing to take fights against top guys. He puts on good fights, even if he's on the losing end of them. So let's put him in against Branch and see how that goes. I like the fight, actually.
His cardio is a little bit suspect. I mean, I know he got a decision win against Kutelaba, who I love to watch, but at the same time, neither one of those guys really have great cardio. And you look at his first fight in the UFC, he lost to Sean Jordan. He got knocked out. So it's kind of crazy that fighting a guy like Sean Jordan, and now you're going to be fighting David Branch. Branch, hometown guy too, so he's going to have that crowd behind him. You look at the co-main event, Chris Weidman, Jacare Souza. The odds are kind of shifting to par right now. I mean, Weidman's roughly a minus 190 favorite. Souza plus 165. He's coming in on short notice, replacing Luke Rockhold. Who do you have in this fight? How do you see it going?
I've got Weidman mainly because of the short notice factor, and Jacare, he did lose to Gastelum. Jacare is always a tough out. I absolutely love watching the guy fight. Weidman, he hit some hard times after losing the title, and I think that took a lot of wind out of his sails, to be honest, because he was on that high with, stopping Silva. As you want to say those wins were fluky, you can call them fluky, but he still won. And then he went in and he beat Lyoto Machida when Machida was still a factor at middleweight. Now he's at a point where he's been out a while again, so there's always that question of ring rust, but I think he gets the edge. Jacare coming in on short notice, though, it is going to be a tough fight.
The one thing I wasn't a big fan of, I mean, Weidman won that fight back in July of last year, and then he's been calling for a title shot. And for Gastelum, he's going to get that shot because he's been so active. And I mean, win or lose, he continues to fight. Got that split decision win over Jacare. I mean, if you look at it and you try and score round by round, it was pretty close. I mean, you look at total strikes, things like that. Jacare edged him. He also had, more takedowns. So on paper, maybe Jacare won. But yeah, that short notice factor is kind of tough. I've got Jacare in the fight. I mean, we know how good his jiu-jitsu is from the embeddeds, from the countdowns, all the different things you watch. His move to Orlando, from what you can see, he's been working on his striking for the most part, which is great, trying to round out his game, especially at his age. So I'm really looking forward to that. Now, as far as the main event goes, DC Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis, a lot of people, I almost want to say they forget, or maybe they don't know because there's so many fans flocking to Derek Lewis for the sound bites, but he's been in the UFC since 2014, 12-3 record. He's fought big names, but he always tends to get hurt in his fights, or he's coming from behind in his fights. You look at Abdurakhimov, Travis Brown in the poster behind me, Tabora, Volkov, and I mean, he was obviously hurt in that Hunt fight. He had the back issues, the cardio issues, and he was finished in that. I mean, DC coming into this one, does he actually have an injured hand? Is that true? Is it not? I mean, how do you see this one?
Now, I'm going to side with Patrick Cummins on this one because I spoke to him in Moncton and I asked him the question, who do you got in this? And he says, DC has heavyweight's number and he's had that number for a long time. He really does. We tend to forget that DC started out at heavyweight, won the Strikeforce Grand Prix back in the day, beat Josh Barnett, beat some fantastic guys, came into the UFC, beat Frank Mir, beat Big Country, and his buddy Kane was the heavyweight champ. He's like, I'm not going to fight him. We're brothers. And eventually, after all the criticism of, hey, man, take off the pounds and go down, you'd be stellar at light heavyweight, he did it. He became champ. We know the history of John Jones. We won't get into that. But and goes back up. And, when I talked to Cummins, and I'm going to side with him because he's been, good so far. When I spoke to him in April in Atlantic City, I said, who do you have in DC Miocic? He goes, DC. He's got their number. Here we go again. Derek Lewis is a power puncher. And he's admitted as much. He's admitted that he was slacking on his training. You see hilarious stuff like him eating a plate of ribs or whatever before a fight. That kind of ridiculous side to Derek Lewis, and we love him for it. But even if he's turned it around and taken this fight camp as seriously as he possibly could, he's only had a month or so to do that. The chances of him being able to turn it around that much to a point where he's able to take out a 2-weight class champion, I find it highly unlikely. I love the guy, and it would be a fantastic story if he somehow pulled off the upset, but I don't see it happening.
I'm glad for Lewis that he's been able to kind of show his personality. He can pretty much say whatever he wants. He's not going to get in trouble for it. And he could possibly get sponsorships like the Popeye sponsorship. So great for him. For DC, it's the same thing. I mean, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, even if we go all the way back to his Dan Henderson fight, and that's somewhere behind me too, you look at that, I mean, people weren't really cheering for DC. I mean, everybody loved Dan Henderson, but it wasn't to the same extent as it is now. And now he's a superstar. He's come into his own. He shows his personality on the broadcast. He was on, what is it now, live with Kelly and Ryan today. So he's been able to show that personality, win or lose for either of these guys. It's great for them that they're, using their platform. They're able to make a little bit of money before they retire. And Lewis has said as much. I mean, I don't care if I win the title. I've got money in the bank and it's all guaranteed. So good for him. I mean, the odds minus 700 for DC roughly, plus 500 for Lewis. And Patrick Cummins, I mean, that was Daniel Cormier's first fight at 205, and we know how that one went. So, I think it's going to be a win for DC. It's probably going to be inside distance, too, and it's probably going to be one of those takes him down, ground and pound, because we know that Derek Lewis's ground game, though he can move well, and we've seen, even standing up, those crazy kicks, but his ground game's not that great. If Tabor and Abdurakhimov could keep him down, DC's probably going to be able to do the same. So thanks so much for the analysis, Jay. It was great having you on. I'm going to have you back on again. Nice to meet you as well in Moncton. Where can the fans find you and Cageside Press online?
CagesidePress.com, our YouTube channel, just youtube.com/CagesidePress. Cageside Press on Twitter and Facebook, any social media platform, we're on there.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for coming on. Enjoy the fights.
Great pleasure, man. Good talking to you.
Really hope you enjoyed the interview, as well as the clips, different ones from Gian Villante, Sean Strickland, Nasrat Haqparast, even David Shaw when he was announcing, what we could see coming up in the near future in 2019 for some of those developing markets, as well for Canada. There's, possibly going to be 3 different things. I think it's going to be Vancouver, somewhere in Alberta, most likely Edmonton, and then as well Montreal. So really looking forward to that, as well as the commitment that the UFC is going to continue to host cards in the Maritimes here. You've got, Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick. I think the next one's probably going to be back in Nova Scotia. You've got Lewis Brown behind me, and that's where that one was in Halifax. But really looking forward to the next year of the UFC as well with that ESPN partnership. It kind of makes things a little bit more difficult to lock those dates in, as David said. But it's going to be a great year and a great rest of 2018 with the fight. So hopefully you're really looking forward to UFC 230. I'm going to have content later on today with Ty O'Keefe and Kristen King on the Toctagon, so you can find us there. We're going to do a UFC 230 card breakdown as well. You can find Ty and I on Dialogue all the time. All you have to do, head on over to getdialogue.am, sign in with your Twitter, click to start a dialogue, and you can be on air just like we are. We love to talk MMA, but you can cover whatever topic you are interested in. So you can find us there daily, and make sure you look out for more content at Craig Allen FNP on Twitter and Instagram, Fight Night Picks as well on Twitter at Fight Night Picks, and you can find more content on the website fightnightpicks.net. So hopefully you have a great weekend, and really looking forward to UFC 230.